initiative. But there have been some misperceptions, and I would like to talk about some of those today. One of them is that adopting common standards will bring all states down to the lowest common denominator. That isn't true. There's an agreement that no states will lower its standards. Kansas will not be lowering its standards. These standards incorporate the best current thinking, the highest international standards, and are focused on preparing our students for their college success and for their career success. Even high-performing states will be moving up. And this is really needed because students are graduating. We all know this. They've done well, they've passed all the tests, even in high-performing states, and they still require remediation. We saw the statistics there, and you see it as you go out in the community. The clerk that can't give you the right change without the cash register telling them what to do, the service worker who doesn't really know how to fix whatever you want fixed at your house. This is really critical to all of us, and it's especially critical for the future. Another misperception is that the standards only include skills and don't address content knowledge. This is also a misperception. It's not correct. The standards address both content and skill knowledge. And you could see, based on the information that we had previously, it's very heavy on a lot of content in both English language arts and in mathematics. And it's structured so that we understand at what level students have, what expectations are demanded at each of those levels. For example, in English language arts, we're going to be looking at literature, but we're also looking at founding documents, Shakespeare, nonfiction, informational text. In mathematics, it's not just the naked numbers that were discussed. It's what we do with them and how they're used in our everyday lives. And that really will prepare our students for college, for their careers. Another common misperception is that some math topics are missing or are at the wrong grade level from what we've had in the past. The math topics that are inherent in the standards were developed based on the best thinking of many states' experts and as well as teachers. They're put into those levels based on research as to what level is the appropriate level for that standard. Now, that doesn't mean that every state is going to have the exact same level for those math standards that they might have in the past. There has to be some adjustment because in the past we had different states at slightly different levels. So you may see something at an earlier stage or a later stage than we've had in the past. But all states will probably have some adjustment in the exact level at which their standard was presented. Another misperception is that teachers were not involved in writing the standards, and as we've seen, that is very incorrect. Teachers were very involved in this and worked together very intensely to draft these standards. It's really from teachers that we get this. This is almost a bottom-up type of approach. These things are needed because teachers were seeing in the classrooms that what they were doing was not working. And so we've gotten the best thinking of many teachers and experts to develop these. Teachers were heavily involved in these standards and will continue to be involved in those. The standards tell teachers what to teach. And as we've seen and talked about previously, the standards don't say what you teach. They say Standards establish what students need to learn, not how the teachers teach. Every teacher in every classroom is going to have a slightly different approach to helping those students because every child is different, and all of our teachers will be adjusting the standards to help each of those students. This will be at the classroom level, and it's not from the standards to tell them how they should do that. Another misperception that we have seen commonly discussed lately is that the standards will be implemented through No Child Left Behind, indicating that the federal government is leading them. And that also is incorrect. These standards are a state-led initiative. They're based on experts from various states. The National Governors Association Center, a state organization, and the Council for Chief State School Officers, also a state type of organization, are developing the policymaker guide to implementation. And that will be used to support the implementation and collaboration efforts between the states. This is state-based, it isn't federal-based. And finally, that the federal government will take over ownership of that. And for the same reasons, these are and will remain a state-based initiative. That's where education occurs, and that's where these standards are going to have their best success. We know that when the rubber meets the road, it's in the classroom with one teacher and one student, and that's where we make our greatest progress to help these students develop critical thinking and the important skills that they will need to be college and career ready.
I don't have any more slides, I just have stories. Stories and a belief in what I think is taking place here. Several years ago, I was teaching reading at Kenneth Henderson Middle School here in Garden City, and it was parent-teacher conference time. And it was at the end of the day, and I watched a father and his son walk toward my table for their conference. And we went ahead and visited about some reading and some behavior issues. And for some reason, at the end of the conference, for whatever reason, I looked at this gentleman and I said, "What is it that you want for your son?" And he looked at me with a little bit of surprise, and he looked at his son, he gave his son a long, hard look, and he looked back at me and he said in broken English, "Better life than me." And I remember at that time thinking, wow, that is a powerful statement. That is a statement that cuts across all ethnicity, language, gender, and economic differences between people. And to me, in my opinion, I think it is what is at the very heart of what drives American education. And if you look at that through our history, if you look at what we've done, we've created public education so that all of our children can be educated, not just the children of the wealthy. We have desegregated our school. We have included, we've had inclusion. We have gone most recently to looking at data so that we can make the best choices about what our kids need. So this continued growth in education happened here in Garden City, and I'm a lifelong resident, so I remember this quite clearly. It was 1980, and IBP was coming to Garden City, and I remember the conversations in my little world, and it was like, oh no, what are we going to do? That's going to change the very fabric of our community. And what's going to happen when those kids come in and they don't speak the language? What are we going to do? Well, this is what we did. We started looking at all these strategies that we could use with those kids that were going to meet the needs of kids that English was not their first language. And to this day, if you walk into our classrooms, you will see language objectives posted on every board because we know that we are still dealing with language issues, and we know that the language is just as important as the content. To me, this is, and like I said, I've been in Garden City for all my life. I've taught all my life in Garden, and I think that this is truly the most exciting to us tonight. If you look at Ms. Howell, she talked about how we're showing that our kids don't have thinking skills. They don't have the skills that they need to go into the workforce. We're looking at Renee said 70% of our kids are going to are not going to be able to go into the military. We looked at our coaches talking about the needs, the shifts in education. And why would I be excited about that? But I think what we're getting ready to do, in my opinion, is we are getting ready to write this next chapter in the history of American education. And I really believe that when people look back on this in 30 years and they study our purpose and they study our efforts and they study our results, they're going to look back at this and they're going to say, for our children, we created a better life than ever.
That you listed, how did you come up with the ones that you focused on? Are these from?
Those are listed on the College and Career Ready website, I believe, and they're also the ones that I keep reading about in the newspaper as being controversial and discussed among people who are interested in these types of things. So there's plenty more.
Sure,
but
I think you did a great job of representing what we've heard.
Are things that we keep reading about in the paper.
I think one of the negative things that I've heard, to talk in more layman terms, is that No Child Left Behind gave teachers the task of teaching from the test, and this gives teachers the opportunity to teach students how to learn. And I would think from a teacher's perspective that would be a really exciting opportunity for you, as well as making the job harder. But what a worthy goal to have. I think that this definitely does have potential to change the world and change that landscape from how education is improving, but yet not improving enough to meet up with the changes that go on in the world.
This might be for you, Sally, I'm not sure, but I'm just trying to get straight in my mind, how, if any, is the state waiver for No Child Left Behind tied to the new college career ready standards?
Okay. The waiver says a state must have college and career ready standards. But like when I think it was Nebraska that got their waiver, and they had not adopted the National College Board standards as of yet. They have now. But at the time the waiver, you could apply for your first waiver. They had not, because as the process was going on for English, language arts, and math, they had just gone through it. And so they didn't want to put the learning back into it. But the waiver, all it says is college and career ready standards. It does not say
And have all states adopted or are looking at a system like this?
48 states.
48 states.
Some of them are having the same problem as Kansas, that 2 years after they adopted them, there's been this rise of criticism and lack of understanding. And it's caught us all a little off guard, because anytime we improve standards, we have to have a hearing. And you have to post that 1 month, then you have the hearing, and then you adopt the standards. So the state of Kansas had that hearing. But states nationwide are not governed in education the same way.
Sure.
So in some states, the fears, maybe are accurate, I don't know. But in the state of Kansas, we are protected because we have that thing called local control. And so the state does not determine curriculum. And so many people do not understand the difference of standards. Got a little more than that.
No, I'm really glad you spoke on that, Sally. That helps a lot.
Another question for you,
I'm
still,
here for
Sally.
you. I'm here for you.
I knew you
Careful.
were. Yeah, and,
Is standing here okay, or do you want me
no,
to?
that's
Okay.
great for me, yeah.
Okay.
Sally, with the remedial work that the colleges apparently have to do based on the slides, I'm wondering to what extent were they involved in the Kansas standard development?
Very much. So, in fact, I just happened to serve on that committee on which the Kansas Board of Regents puts 2 people on, we put 2 people on, and I happened to be on that committee. Higher ed in itself was at the table with Common Core, because not just in the state of Kansas, but in all states, everybody was having a gap between high school and college. And if you will remember, a few years ago, the P20 Council was developed, and the charge was to align our curriculum K through 20. And so part of these new standards have that alignment with higher ed in P through 20. May I share a little bit about assessments?
Sure, I just wanted perspective and you're providing that.
Okay, one thing you need to know is we have not made a decision on assessments, okay? But one of the talk in this committee, the assessments that we choose, they are hoping to be a placement in higher ed. Not, and what we're trying to do is when you give your test, 11th grade, is that right? 11th grade, you give assessments, okay. Then the teachers get that immediate feedback, so that senior year, instead of being wasted, that's the remedial year. It's not the first year in college. It's not the first year we set them. Because if these are the standards that we say the students in the state of Kansas need to know before they graduate, then we need a remediation before they graduate. And they need to be proficient. And so let's get the remediation. And the higher ed is talking about helping us develop that course for that remediation. So that when remediation is needed in college, it's done more on a tutoring basis. Because what they're finding now is that the student may need remediation, but only maybe on a couple of standards. But yet they have to take this full class. And so when they get stuck in that, they lose the relevance. And so you end up with a dropout of college. And so if we can handle that situation, that's what we're trying to do. Now, did that bring up another question?
It did in this college and career readiness, because certainly certain career paths don't necessarily go through college. And, we're not gonna catch anybody who's really looking at that career path to a standard, to a collegiate environment.
I can answer that question if the chairman doesn't mind me taking your time. We are talking about, at the last board meeting, what was presented to us. I'm gonna say, let's look at a flower base, because it looked like a flower base to me, okay? Let's do the STEM being K through, 7th grade, is that, help me out when the last test is, 7th, 8th, okay. Through 8th grade, okay? Let's keep that assessment the same. Let's everybody in the state do that assessment, okay? But we know that after that, with the work that your school system is doing in Pathways, with most of the school systems in the state of Kansas are giving some type of tutor or, can't remember, but a tutor test on interest and skills. So, explore, no, that's not the one I'm thinking of, but let's take you for instance. Okay, you know you're going to college, okay? Why should he take a state assessment except for placement? That's good. Or maybe he needs to take the ACT. But does he need to take both? Do we really need that double testing?
keep all the doors open, we do.
This is a decision that has not been made yet, okay? However, the state of Kansas, except for 2 school districts, have never paid for ACT. We pay for one assessment. And that's probably what we're gonna do, because we, you know. So we pay for one assessment, okay? But you really have a technical skill, and you wanna take that test so that you can start working. So maybe your assessment needs to be that technical skill. Not intended. But you don't have a clue what you want to do. You're a member of my family. No, we love everything. But maybe so you take that state assessment, so you know how well you'll do. You could place in any college in the state. You could still go there, and if that's what you choose to do, then you can take the ACT. And so, we all know that children need more than K-12 anymore. But do they all need to be assessed the same? We don't know. I'm getting pushback on it. Some of it is, we have benchmarked all of them, so we can have a common benchmark. So if you take your, let's see, what test were you taking? ACT. Okay. We can help you though, in your state assessment, there's benchmarks. And so that maybe we could still compare this as a state. We're looking into that. We don't have the answers to that. That has not been decided. That is what we were given at the last state board meeting. We were given this bouquet. So I'll be listening to all of you on the bouquet of tests, whether we really want that. You know, there's pros and cons to that. And if we really want to be compared apples to, but you know, we still have ACT tests that some take that are going to compare nationwide. And we still have that can compare nationwide. To me, I'm more about the individual student, because we know the standards are internationally built on now. We know they're going to be able to go out and compete in the world. So let's get them assessed for what they need in their personal lives. That's kind of where I stand right now. Until somebody changes my mind. Has been known to happen. Just don't tell my husband. Okay, that was more than you wanted, but does that help?
Other questions?
And you may not be able to answer this, because this, you just said you
Okay.
don't have all the answers yet on it, but who would get to make that decision, do you think? Or have you guys even thought of that? Does the student get to make the decision? Or are we looking at, well, you know,
We have the beauty of coming up with those ideas, and then we have the thing called local control. Yep, you will have to decide, this board will have to decide how you want to administer that. But you know, since we're changing out of No Child Left Behind to where we aggregate information, third graders, but we don't really look at each individual, now you're going to have to look at each individual student to show growth. I think you're going to know your students pretty well. And I bet you the teachers up in your high school knows those kids pretty well. And so I hope it's a decision that the student, the parent, and a counselor or somebody you choose makes that decision.
Any questions?
Well, it's gonna be hardest when you get that student in your senior year. But if they've been to school standards,
or if they've got a teacher that has applied relevancy to their
Yes.
learning, and they know as a sophomore, they should probably take the ACT then, so they can hone in on the skills they need to improve, then you've got that kid one step closer to his goals.
but with the new evaluation systems that we're all developing, you're going to know which teacher is providing that relevance.
Right, especially in our academy setting in our
Earlier.
high school.
You will be able to define that earlier, and you will have that data sooner, to where you might not have 350 kids go through on a teacher that you wish you had sent to them. And at the same time, you're gonna find those outstanding teachers that you wish you could have 150. Yes, you do. You've got a great school system, got great teachers.
With that, I'd like to ask the representatives if they have any questions that the presenters could answer for them.
Actually, I did. First of all, I want to thank all the presenters. It was a very interesting and informative presentation. And really, it's exciting to think that this could be the start of a revolution in public education. But I see two potential roadblocks. And I want some feedback back on how real they are. You're talking about new ways to learn, but that also means new ways to teach. Seems to me some part of the teaching community might not embrace that wholeheartedly, might resist a little bit, having to change and do things in new ways. That's one roadblock. The other roadblock would be a lag in instructional materials to teach in this new way. Are those real problems, and if so, how are you dealing with them?
The first problem in this district is answered by the job embedded professional development that we do as coaching. Every building has a literacy coach, and a lot of buildings have math coaches. And we meet in PLCs with our teachers, we do walkthroughs in their classrooms, and we coach them. And so there's a lot of job embedded professional development in this district.
I think they may not know what PLCs are.
Professional learning communities. In my building, I teach in the 5th and 6th grade building. I meet 3 times a week with the 5th grade math teachers and 3 times a week with the 6th grade math teachers. I do 2 walkthroughs a month with every math teacher, and I coach every math teacher at least twice a month.
Now, gentlemen, you have a state statute on professional development, and that's what this money is for, is to help move this along.
And I think attitude-wise, I think that most of our teachers are on board. They're a little apprehensive because they don't know how to change, and that's kind of what our jobs are as coaches, is to help give them what we call tool belt, so that they know what to do when something new comes up. They have new resources, and we kind of offer those things. But most of them are really positive about the change. I mean, teachers know we have to change.
As a former teacher, I think, Dawn, to answer your question, May is No Child Left Behind took away the ability to teach. This gives us the ability, this gives the teachers the ability to teach again. And I think every teacher, if a farmer wants to farm, a teacher wants to teach. And so if I was an instructor, I'd jump on this, both feet up.
But John, you and I are a little older. We have a whole group of instructors out there that have taught their whole lives only under No Child Left Behind. And the state school board is also over the schools of education. And so we have asked the schools of education to prepare teachers at one time for No Child Left Behind. Now, in the past 2 years, we have asked those schools to go in and prepare teachers again for individual teaching of a child. But, you know, that's a whole new philosophy of teaching. And we are in the tides of moving it, but we're not there yet. And that's why the professional development money is so important.
And what about instructional materials? Is there a lag? Do you have what you need? Will it be here in time?
In math, we put off adopting textbooks because the textbooks are not current to the Common Core. We developed a transitional curriculum that we're using other resources for, and through that transitional curriculum, our teachers are learning more about the Common Core. But textbooks, we don't know. We have a plan, but we really were critical when we looked last year, and when we looked, we were looking critically at the textbooks that were available, and we saw that they were the old textbooks with the Common Core pushed in. And that's not what we want. We want textbooks that are Common Core textbooks. So no, we don't currently have textbooks, but we do have a curriculum that we're working with. And I'm excited about that as a coach because my teachers are learning about the Common Core without learning it the way a textbook sees it. And I think that's exciting.
I think the real key is exactly what Marcia said, and that is the teacher's approach. Materials are nice, but you can teach with or without a particular textbook series or a particular set of resources. The key is how does the teacher approach it, and how does the teacher ignite thinking and metacognition in a kid.
Out of the 87 school districts that are in my district, I would bet you that about half of them will probably never buy a textbook for science. That there is enough information online, and these teachers are quite resourceful about using each other and helping each other, and there's multiple websites that they can go to. The state has a website in which they can get materials off of, and there's all sorts of materials out there. So many of the smaller schools are even talking about not buying textbooks at all. That's a place where they are cutting expenses.
We also have a one-to-one initiative with the learning tool. The iPad is our tool of choice. So at the high school level, we have that learning tool available as well. So we, like we said earlier in the presentation, the technology and communication is now interwoven in every aspect of what the student learns.
Shall we have any other questions for us?
Just, I guess one comment. First of all, thanks for the invitation to be here tonight with Sally and you folks to have this information. I guess the one thing that stood out to me, and it's more of a comment to me, is that your district assessment results have been improved considerably over 9 years' time. And that's very positive for your community. But at the same time, the need for remediation at 2-year or 4-year higher education institutions remains as high as any place. And that tells me a couple of things I think that are not such good news. And certainly if we kept going down an identical path, you would not expect to see any different outcome, because when you keep doing things the same way, you tend to get the same result. I guess this is a method. It's one that's going to be discussed a lot. But my kind of view is we've got State Board of Education, we have local school boards. You folks seem to be taking time to become informed on this. I know that you care about the students in your district. I do too. And want to work with you. And I just appreciate you getting an opportunity and more information to ultimately base some decisions on that I expect the legislature will be called upon to make. So thank you for that.
I would be really curious to see the numbers once our, I guess, current sophomores will be when they're in college with the access to the iPad, and especially to I2Q, where you can pull from, well, say you're in your calculus class, and I have no idea what that person is saying in front of me. So I'm going to pull from the Harvard professor here on this issue, and I'm going to pull from the Stanford professor here, so I can understand the concept that the person directly in front of me is trying to explain to me, which I'm not getting because for whatever reason. But that person here talks a little bit more my language, so I'm understanding it better. So I'm going to be really curious where our current sophomore class, because they'll have the full 4 years of the iPad, and how much remediation we're going to have to see there. Because they haven't gone through the Common Core, because our Common Core started with what, our current second graders? If I'm correct. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they progress on.
On your standard, on your percentage, I think she's got a point too, by the way, but on your dropout percentage, you know, I've questioned this at this meeting, this committee meeting I'm on several times, because I felt like those numbers were a little high for the schools. I think you've got to realize too that we haven't been in the job of collecting that data for a long time. And we haven't been able, until the last, I think it's 2 years, I don't want to be quoted on just exactly how many years, have we all been able to, the KSDE and K-Board has been able to share that computer-wise. Also, if you have students that graduate from here and they go to multiple colleges and they don't stay at one and graduate, that affects those numbers because we don't have those students. We only have the students that went to a school and graduated from those schools. So you might have students out there that maybe moved or went to a couple but still graduated. They aren't in that dropout number. They weren't used to form that dropout percentage. I think it's something that if I saw that, I would be concerned about. I think you should probably say that maybe you have a 5% one way or the other on that. Because that is, and I think you will see that information become better and those numbers be more accurate. I think it's okay to work with, but I don't think they're rock solid accurate.
Just a short tail on the dropout comment too. We learned this in a presentation we received a month ago about the number of eligibility for the military. A high school diploma is required, not a GED.
That's right.
So if you get a GED, you're still not eligible for the military.
That's why
That's
some,
a huge concept.
that's why so many of the schools are no longer offering GED, they're offering high school equivalents, and that's why the visual schools, the virtual schools have become so popular.
Tom, another thing on the statistics, just a thought I might have, could be right or wrong, I have a lot of thoughts that are wrong. But our teachers in Garden City are outstanding, they always, they have, and my kids went through that. We were told to teach the test, and our teachers did a great job teaching the test. I think even if we didn't do anything, that 45.8% or whatever would go up because of the Common Core, and this new system's going in because those kids who have graduated were taught the test. They weren't taught like our teachers want to teach. And so I think that number's wrong.
Any other questions, Shannon?
I've got a few comments tonight. I believe that, and I support Common Core, not just because of the research and the statistics that have been gone over. I very much appreciate all the hard work that the teachers and the experts did to show that we need certain particular standards for English language arts at certain grade levels or math at certain grade levels. But I see this as a much more important issue for our nation. I believe that unless we do have an initiative such as this, our nation will continue to decline in its educational standards, and we will lose the standing that we have always enjoyed in our lifetimes. And we will not pass that on to our children. That will not make a better world for our children. To that end, I had a few comments that I wrote down, so I hope you will bear with me. I believe that Common Core makes common sense, and we need to abolish the good enough view that has been proposed by many, that what was good enough for me, what was good enough for my children or my grandchildren is good enough for the current students of today. That's not true, and it never was. What was appropriate for me or my children or grandchildren is not necessarily appropriate for our current students. Circumstances change and times change. And in recent times, change has occurred more rapidly than in the past due to improvements in communication and technology. Several decades ago, Alvin Toffler wrote about this in his book Future Shock, which contends that the rate of change is exponentially higher now than it has been in the past. For us to choosing to be behind the curve, to not just be second best, but to eventually be at or near the bottom of the pack. The United States has been steadily declining in its standing of its public schools. And this isn't because we're not improving, because we are. It's because we're not improving quickly enough to match the rate of change that's occurring around us. The Common Core College and Career Ready Initiative is a positive and coordinated response to reverse this trend and to once again start our public schools on a sharper path upward to meet the changes that will occur, whether we like it or not, whether we can keep up or not. Sorry. The majority of states are involved in this state-led initiative. This allows the initiative to gain from the experiences and expertise of many and not just depend on what we have locally available in our districts or within our state. The standards will benefit our economy as well. Adopting standards in core subjects will allow students to more easily transfer when families move and schools and districts to incorporate and place incoming students. This will enable workers to move for jobs knowing that their children will have a more seamless transition academically into a new school system. It'll also benefit communities such as ours in Garden City, not only when we enroll new students who move to our community, but it will encourage people to stay in our community, knowing that our schools have the same standards as schools across the nation. We all know those who left good-paying jobs in our community to move to other areas of our state or country, not because they were seeking greater employment opportunities, but solely to obtain what they perceived was a better educational opportunity for their children. The Standards Initiative will elevate standards across the state and nation and create more uniformity in academic expectations in core subject areas. And I would emphasize that this is core. Districts, schools, and teachers will not be in lockstep with each other. States can individualize to a great degree, and implementation methods, additional standards in non-core subject areas, and the personal teacher and student relationships are unchanged. The Standards Initiative will help our schools concentrate their efforts for all students in areas which have been shown to be critical to the demands of post-secondary education and career needs. In our state, this truly will make our students college and career ready. We can't continue to produce graduates with limited skills and incomplete educational abilities. A strong and cohesive public education system utilizing these standards will create the rising tide in public education that will float all students' boats. There will be cost efficiencies as states learn from each other and standards are refined and adapted as new technologies and changes occur. We won't have to learn and relearn lessons individually, but can gain from each other. The proverbial wheel will not have to be created anew in each state. We have common standards in many areas that are important to us across our nation, in healthcare, in banking, and communication, among others. Having common standards in education doesn't detract from the rights of states and local communities, but helps all of us to work together in a more coordinated fashion. Having common standards of expectations for our students will help them as individuals and help our country as a whole. It's imperative that all of us carefully consider this initiative and weigh its benefits. We can't expect a different outcome, as has been said, if we continue to do what we've been doing. And the cost of continuing to do what we've been doing to both our students individually and to our society as a whole are tremendous. I understand there are some who, despite evidence to the contrary, refuse to concede any benefit or advantage of adopting common standards for students. I reviewed the most common misperceptions that were brought forth earlier and have discussed the factual information that shows they're not true. Persisting in such misconceptions appears to only gain political influence for some who are preying on the unfounded fears and myths perpetrated by a few where there is no supporting factual anyone should attempt to gain political gain or to leverage political gain at the expense of our children's education and our nation's future. Our country does need to improve its public schools. We see the demands of the future and feel unsure of our ability to meet them. But we must meet them because not doing so will doom our children and grandchildren to a second-class standing that we have never experienced in our lifetimes in this country. Past initiatives have helped, but have not been able to create the change we need to get back on track. Education happens on a one-to-one basis, but it doesn't happen without a plan or a structure that allows us all to gain from the best ideas of many. This initiative, with its strong and coordinated involvement from the brightest in many states, promises the best answer to reverse our decline. We are running a race, and we are running faster than we ever have, but we're being eclipsed by faster runners from other countries, and we must regain our lead. I believe that Common Core makes common sense, and I urge you all to support it and to encourage all those around you to do so as well.
Thanks, Jim. First off, I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your schedules to join us this evening. I'd like to invite you, as you're talking to your constituents, as you're talking to your fellow legislators, as questions come up, contact Series 457 or contact your local district. Get the answers to your questions from the people whose feet are on the ground. Anything we can do to help you as you go through this decision-making process when you return to Topeka or you return to your neighborhoods. Thank you. And ladies, excellent job. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. With that, under open discussion, we have one slot still open on the board faculty meeting. Victor Ornelas on 11/13 at 3:20. So please check your schedules and see if anybody could be available. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Any questions? Okay. Next board meeting will be Monday, October 7th at 6 o'clock here in the board meeting room.
Mr. President, I'm going to adjourn.
Moved and seconded by Alex.